Hey horror fans, welcome back to Room 237, coming at you with my 99th video. So I figured, do something special. My 99th video, I talk about my second favorite movie of all time. Then my 100th, talk about my number one favorite film of all time. So these may be a little longer. There are definitely films that are not underseen, but my second favorite movie of all time, you're looking right at it, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Fucking masterpiece. I mean, this is such... It's kind of weird saying it's a beautiful film, but if you're into horror, you know what I mean. And this is a great addition, too. This is the Steelbook 2-disc. I mean, this is just amazing looking. Has great features. Has like 2-hour-long documentaries. It's only 84 minutes, so it is kind of a short movie. And the thing about this is, it's known as one of the biggest slasher films. A lot of people think it is one of the goriest, bloodiest, nastiest movies of all time. Really, no blood in it, no gore. It's just that title, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, that sticks out to people. Of course, I think this was Tobe Hooper's first professional film. One he did before this was a documentary called Eggshells, which I think was more of like a student film. I could be wrong on that. But, before getting into the story, you got to appreciate the filmmaking behind it. I mean, obviously it was shot in Texas in the sweltering summer. Shooting took 32 days. They had no money. So, I mean, like Gunnar Hansen, who wonderfully plays Leatherface. He's the best Leatherface. He had to wear the same outfit for like a month. And he's a heavier set guy, so he sweats a lot. And it was a miserable experience for everyone involved. But they all say they would never change it. Actually, Edwin Neal, who plays the hitchhiker, he's actually a Nam vet, and he actually said this was the worst experience of his life. But, there's just... So, I mean, what can I say about this that hasn't been said already? I mean, even looking at the back, it says, it has been called grisly, sick, perverse, as well as raw, unshakable in the movie that redefined horror. It's attacked by churches, banned by governments, and acclaimed by only the bravest of critics. Yeah, I mean, this movie got a shitty release because it was purchased by Mafia Film Distribution, played in sleazy drive-ins, but eventually it finally took off. I love the look of the film. I mean, there's if there is a good Blu-ray of it, I don't want to see it because I love the look of the film so much. I love it. It looks like a documentary. I think that is one reason why a lot of people think it's gorier and more violent than it actually is. Because it looks like a snuff film. It looks like these people are actually dying. And the film is so gritty and grainy. And that's beautiful to me. I love the look of it. I think it was shot on like 16 millimeter or something. Very, documentary looking. The story is there's a group of friends. Well, actually, the film opens up with, a very famous opening crawl with like, the film in which you are about to see. Voiced by John Larroquette, who I guess was paid to do that with the joint. John Larroquette's voice is awesome. They keep doing opening scrawls throughout most of them. John Larroquette, I think, only did this one and the remake. He might have done the prequel to the remake, but his voice is the perfect for all of them. One of the most bizarre crimes in the annals of American history, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And there's not really a soundtrack, it's all sound effects. Like, during the opening credits, somewhat, you hear like the shovel digging in dirt, and there's like that camera, like, pew, like that almost sounds like a fly, like old school cameras. with this horrific grave robbing tableau, bodies dug up. And basically, our group of friends, you know, head by Marilyn Burns playing Sally, Paul Bartain playing her brother Franklin, who's in a wheelchair. I think it was like their grandfather's grave or something was one that was desecrated, and they're going to check things out. So they stop off at their grandfather's house, and nearby is where the demented Sawyer family lives. Of course, the kids get too close, shit goes wrong. And of course, this film was partially inspired by Ed Gein, who is a notorious serial killer. A lot of people think he killed a lot of people. He only has 2 known victims, but he was also a grave robber. And from his grave robbings, he made a lot of artifacts out of human body parts. Like, he had a belt made out of nipples, bowls, soup bowls made out of the tops of skulls, lampshades and upholstery made out of human skin. He actually had what they called a breast vest. Like, he made clothes and masks out of human skin. And he's from Wisconsin. So a lot of people think this is the true story. Some dude in Texas with a chainsaw. No. It's an elderly man with mommy issues from Wisconsin. But the cannibalism and the wearing of human skin and artifacts made out of bones and body parts, that's what this movie takes from Ed Gein. And I mean, right off the bat, they pick up a hitchhiker played by Edwin Neal, who is just really crazy. They kick him out. They run into this older guy at a gas station who got a good barbecue going on. And come to find out, they're all related to Leatherface. Which I always thought the cook, the older guy, was the father of the hitchhiker and Leatherface, because there's a part where he looks at the hitchhiker and is like, look what your brother did to the door. But I guess all 3 of them are brothers. There's Grandpa, he's actually played by an actor who's like 18 or 19, but he is so decrepit looking. I mean, he's ancient. He looks like he's 200 years old, but he's still alive somehow. You have Grandma, who is dead. She's a rotting corpse on like a throne. But the atmosphere of the film is, it's very uncomfortable. You can almost feel the heat coming off the screen. You almost want to take a shower after seeing the house, because they did a wonderful job. Who did the, does it say? Who did the cinematography? No, it doesn't. Anyway, like the house, it's full of chicken feathers and chickens and just furniture made out of bones and skulls, and you can tell it's hotter than hell in there. Of course, you get such iconic scenes. Like, one of my favorite shots is the girl in the meat hook, which looks real because the score is like this very nerve-wracking. And she gets put on the hook, and you just see a little bit of blood on the wall behind her. And she's not screaming, but it's like this out of breath, like in shock, kind of moaning. Really sells it well. You get, of course, the guy walks through the house and he trips over something. Leatherface pops behind a door, hits him with a sledgehammer. He falls, does this convulsing. Leatherface drags him through the door, slams the door shut, and you get that boom. Creepy as hell. This is definitely the scariest out of all of them. Just the way they have just sound effects for a score, the imagery of like this documentary style look is just really helps sell it and make it look so wonderful. Of course, probably one of the scariest scenes would be when Sally has to push Franklin because he's in a wheelchair. And Franklin's just a whiny asshole through the whole film. Even Sally's character is on the brink with him. It's nighttime, they have a flashlight. When they turn around, Leatherface just pops out and just starts. I mean, some people, like I've heard a lot of people, even like my dad, says that it's corny and cheesy. I can see why people would think that, but I just think this film is an absolute masterpiece. I can't praise it enough. I know I'm not really getting into the story because it really isn't one. It's just a group of friends who wander off to a place they shouldn't be and they just get taken out. I know it's called Chainsaw Massacre, but there's really not a whole lot to do with the chainsaw other than, Franklin, one guy gets cut up while the girl's on the meat hook. And then there's just a long chase scene. And of course, the most uncomfortable part of the movie is the dinner scene, which I guess took like 24 to 26, some people even say up to 30 hours to shoot. Sweltering heat. You have Sally tied to a chair where the arms are human arms. And there's just all these uncomfortable shots of like up close to her eyes, super crazy zoomed in, eerie, nerve-wracking sound effects. You have the hitchhiker and the cook sort of mocking her screaming. And it's just this fast editing. It's really unnerving. But it's done so fucking well. Again, like, I don't know how I could... I don't know what I could say that hasn't been said about this. Marilyn Burns helps sell it so well. She's one of my favorite final girls. I know she doesn't really do much and she gets saved at the end. But I mean, she's being chased. She's being chased, one by a dude with a straight edge razor who's hacking her back up to shit. Then there's an even bigger guy with a chainsaw behind him. So, I mean, hopping in the back of a truck is probably her best bet. And I love the ending of the film where, Sally's in the bed of the truck. And you just see that image of Leatherface coming at her. And then once they're finally a distance away, Leatherface just kind of gives up at her frustration. And he does like this little swinging dance with the chainsaw. And then it just ends. And it's just perfect. The character Leatherface is more complex than I think some people give him credit for. He is portrayed as mentally retarded. He is a vicious monster, but he's more so a big baby. Like, he's kind of protecting his home, so to speak. Kind of doing what his older brothers are telling him to do. And what's really creepy is he doesn't really have an identity. Like, you never see him without the mask. You hear him talk once, but it's mostly just... You can't really make out what he's saying. And he assumes the identity of whatever mask he's wearing. Like, you have the regular Leatherface mask that you see throughout most of the film. You have the old lady mask, when he's preparing the dinner. Then you have the pretty woman, when it's Pretty Woman, but he's wearing a guy's suit. During the dinner scene, because he wants to look pretty for, the guests for dinner. And it's really creepy to think just... And also, this is different than other slashers because, one, it helps set the framework, yes. But, in slasher films, they usually come up with, like, a weird backstory, or there's someone that just won't die, or whatever. But with this is the one that I would watch and probably say is the most realistic, as far as there really are twisted fucking people out there. There's nothing supernatural about them. Which also, the isolation in this movie, it's almost the reverse of The Shining, because The Shining is isolation on the snowy mountains. This is isolation in in like the middle of Texas. I think it was filmed in Austin. And they do a great job of just showing long stretches of road with nothing but farmland. Like, no matter how far you run, there's almost no traffic. There's miles and miles from another house. Texas is sometimes called the land that time forgot because it's just junkyards. And it does a wonderful job at really making these characters look like they are alone and they're fucked. Just, and actually I've shown this to a few people, like friends who normally wouldn't be into like an older horror movie like this, and by the time they get to the dinner scene they are just dead silent, just glued to it, like they can't believe what they're watching. But yeah, I haven't really been talking about the story because the story's already been talked about. All you can talk about are reasons around it why it's so great. Even then, I mean, 1974, I mean, this movie's going on its 45th anniversary, which means they're probably going to come out with some awesome edition. But I'm happy with this one. In fact, I had 2 copies. I bought the one that's all black and just has the chainsaw on it that says special edition, but it's just remastered. This one is worth getting because of all the features. And it was cheap when I found it, so. But yeah, the documentaries on it are fantastic. And all I can keep praising is just its visuals, its sound effects, its performances. Its performances are not cheesy at all. I know the other characters, like the ones that get killed, seem kind of flat. It's more so Sally and Franklin that more so had the personalities. But, you know, the hitchhiker, you really buy he's that insane. The cook is the same way, played by Jim Sedow, who was in the sequel. At some point I'll get to the sequel, which the first time I saw the sequel, I hated it. I mean, I see why Tobe Hooper went with a black comedy, a dark comedy, because he didn't think he could make a movie as scary as this. No, it was the right direction, but I didn't really like it. This franchise is probably the worst as far as just consistently bad films. I mean, Chainsaw 2 has grown on me. 3 I don't remember a damn thing about. I have all of them. 4 is just horrendous. I mean, that is worse than like a Batman and Robin type movie. The remake I actually do enjoy. That was the first one I saw. The prequel is kind of a bullshit film. Chainsaw 3D I thought was bad. They fucked up a lot. I have not seen Leatherface, the prequel to this, which is basically just the Devil's Rejects. But this has been one of my top favorite films. Almost have always been my second favorite movie. That's what it is now. Usually my favorite films are always changing, but this has always been my second for a very long time. And every time I rewatch it, or I watch the bonus features, or it's referenced, like there's a lot of movies where people are watching this, it just makes me love and appreciate it that much more. And I'm sure there's a bunch more that I'm not saying about it, but again, what else can be said about it that has been said already? It's my second favorite movie of all time. And they don't make them like this anymore. I mean, the closest thing you get now is like found footage movies, but those are kind of different. But there's so much iconic imagery, and the thing that people think it is so gory and so bloody, and the fact you don't really see the goriest part of the film is when Sally's going to be saved by the truck driver, and he throws a wrench at him, and he falls, and the chainsaw lands on his leg, and you see a little bit of skin and meat coming out. But I love the look of Leatherface, especially at the end when he's in the suit and he's chasing after Sally. And he does that little dance at the end. The atmosphere of just it being hot as hell and isolated. Like, you know, there's some movies like John Carpenter's The Thing, you watch it and you get chills because you can tell it's cold. This movie, this movie makes you feel hot. Like it does a good job at just showing how hot Texas is. I've never been to Texas. I live in the opposite, which is Maine. But yeah, I don't know what else I can say. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, it's a masterpiece. It is, and I know some people will laugh at that. They think this movie's cheesy. To each their own, but you know, and this is gonna sound weird, but when it comes to horror movies, I consider this to be like The Godfather. Like, it is that good. I love it that much because it takes the conventions of filmmaking, like it, like I said about the score, it's just sound effects, eerie sound effects like I can't even describe or like make with my mouth, but it's just like eerie and almost like nails on a chalkboard, and it just makes like the scene with the girl in the freezer is really like freaky looking. But yeah, for a movie that's not gory, not bloody at all, it just sort of has that Mandela effect where people think it's like Hostile or something. Which even Hostile isn't even that gory. But yeah, I mean, Tobe Hooper, he nailed it with this one. And I know I've heard a lot of times people talk about horror films, they just use this. This is synonymous with classic horror. And I see why. I can't recommend this movie enough. If you haven't seen it, chances are you've seen clips of it. Guarantee it. But if you haven't seen it, go out immediately and go and find a way to get it. It's an amazing movie. And just how it's shot, low budget documentary feel, I think is absolutely beautiful. I love the gritty graininess of it. I would call this movie scary. It's the most realistic. There are fucked up people out there like this. Not just in the inbred backwoods, like there are people like this all over the place. But yeah, I don't really know what else to say because everything else has already been said. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, 1974, my second favorite movie of all time. Fucking masterpiece. I love it so much. I can't praise it enough. But yeah, Ferone 237, that's my piece on the classic masterpiece Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Thank you.